Do you believe that worshipping Bao Jiaxian will make you soar? But the consequences of running away from the fairy family are also very serious. On this day, several young people in the village grabbed a yellow skin, and after some torture, the yellow skin was already dying. And when Fu Biao was about to beat him to death with a stick, Li Lao Er, who happened to be passing by, stopped them, and exchanged the yellow skin for a life with a coal and copper plate. A few days after this incident, Li Lao Er had a strange dream, in which a man kept calling himself Angong, and said that he would make him prosperous and rich for the rest of his life. Since then, Mr. Li's small business has skyrocketed. Relying on small business to accumulate some capital, Li Lao Er opened a lot of shops in several nearby counties. Within a few years, he became a wealthy man, built a super big villa, also set up a special family protection immortal inside. A few years later, Li Lao Er married a young wife in her 20s. The days are getting more and more prosperous day by day. Then a few more years passed. When Li Lao Er was sleeping, he dreamed of Daxian again. The man told him that the big yellow dog in the house was going to give birth. There are 5 of them, but there is one with white hair on the chest that cannot be kept. That puppy is the best among dogs. But when he grows up, he will bite Wang Taisin's child to death. So be sure to help him kill the little yellow dog. After waking up from the dream, Li Lao Er told his wife that Daxian had come to look for him. But the daughter-in-law thought it was just a dream. The next morning, the rhubarb in the yard was born. Exactly 5 puppies. And there is a milk dog that really has white hair on his chest. Thinking of Wang Taisin's words, Li Lao Er was just about to start. But seeing the puppy is very cute and a little unbearable. So I asked the housekeeper to keep the puppy alone. You can't just take a step out of the house. After half a year, the puppy grew up. He secretly ran out and killed a house of yellow skins. Seeing this scene, Li Lao Er knew that he had made a big mistake. Hurry up to Wang Taisin's tablet to confess. It's kowtow and mountain-faced. As a result, the tablet opened a crack in the next second. That night, the servants in the courtyard saw a group of yellow-skinned people moving. There are dozens of them, large and small. Since then, Mr. Li's business has plummeted. Not only did he owe debts, but his home was raided. The prosperity of yesteryear is gone like a dream. I kicked and smashed my father's tombstone, also proudly showed off to his grandfather. But after listening to it, Grandpa was like a thunderbolt from the blue. Said that what I kicked was the vitality of the old Li family. If you don't hide in a safe house, you won't survive tonight. Although my father and my mother were set up before they died. But the tombstone wasn't a curse on them. It's a master who gives life to my family. The vitality can assure the safety of a family and the success of a career. Grandpa's words had just been finished. I received a call from my employer. Said that my father was reported for taking private work and had been dismissed. I hurriedly asked my grandfather if there was any way to make amends. The 4th uncle on the side said that there was a way not to save it. I just have to be wronged. The first is to kowtow a whole bowl to the head of the parent's fingers. It's called a rat fall. The second is to lie down in a coffin and sleep for the night. It is said that it is to dissolve the yang kong qi on the body. In the end, I have to help the leader of a family who does right things. Achieve the purpose of breaking the kill. I don't want my parents to be the leader of someone else's life. But for the sake of the family's survival, it still hardened. At night, I was the only one left in the morning hall. After a little drinking, my courage grew. Then the staggering court time walked away. As soon as I arrived at the door of the morgue, I froze where I was, because there was a pair of blood-red eyes staring at me inside. This scene scared the hell out of me. A bright gun crouched in the corner. After relieving himself, I guess it's an illusion caused by the reflection of a dead man's eyes. But before leaving, the 4th uncle told me that I must not be released quietly. But I still couldn't help but be curious, knocking on it. I was about to poke open the window to see what was going on inside. The cat's meow behind me made me break out in a cold sweat. Where the dead man appears, a black cat appears. This is a bad omen. Seeing this, I was about to slip away. A feeling of dizziness and nausea instantly came to my heart. I looked up after throwing up. The black cat was gone. So he sat down on the ground and prepared to rest. The next morning, Uncle 4th saw me sleeping on the ground. Asked if anything's wrong. After answering the 4th uncle, everything is normal. He began to carry the coffin down early, since last night was my wake. So I opened the way in front. When he was about to arrive at the cemetery, the 4th uncle asked, "Have I ever smelled a new stinky kiss?" Look back at the coffin. It's pouring water. And the coffin is also inside the contents. Sat down. Have you ever experienced the fear of being haunted by a hanged ghost? Do you know the tragic story of the little white shoes back then? It all started with this beast landlord's house. Dongmei is married to a boy 30 years younger than him. Unexpectedly, the day of the cave house, the boy died unexpectedly. Since then, Dongmei has been working as a coolie. This beast landlord actually had a lustful heart for his daughter-in-law Dongmei. Make it difficult in every way. In the end, it was even with the next person. Wasted Dongmei. Afterwards, Dongmei didn't cry or make trouble. Hates everyone. I put on my favorite little white shoes. Can't tell ever committed suicide. My grandfather was 8 years old that year. From an early age, he was apprenticed to an old carpenter. That night, Grandpa Tai and Master passed by here. come to a house. After knocking for a long time, no one opened the door. Obviously there is no one. And the meal was eaten. I slept here at night. There is a rule for the older generation to sleep. The singular sleeps backwards. There is no sin in doing work. 8-year-old grandfather that night. They sleep on the other hand. In the middle of the night, there was a sound of bada bada. Grandpa poked his head out. I actually saw a pair of small white shoes. To be precise, it should be a sling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everyone is like a demon. Followed the female ghost all over the house in a blink of an eye. Obviously 7 people. How one person is missing. Grandpa was almost scared to pee in the bed. After a while, there was no movement. Grandpa was ready to take a look outside. Suddenly, a pale face appeared in front of your eyes. So you're here. I said how to burn you. As he spoke, he pounced on his grandfather. At this moment, a golden light appeared. The female ghost was catapulted all the way away. It turned out that I was scared to pee my pants. Boy, urine worked. Grandpa broke out of the window. Escaped. I don't know how far I ran. Finally, I saw a light ahead. And at this time, the female ghost also caught up. Little Tokyo. You can't get it out. Rushed at Grandpa. Entered the body of the grandfather. Grandpa lost consciousness in an instant. When I opened my eyes again, a one-eyed man appeared in front of him. This is a female ghost who scares away with the sound of a chicken. It turned out that these people were the owners of the murderous house. The female ghost was the poor person who had been abused by the landlord before. The landlord was afraid of the revenge of the female ghost, so it's helpful to bring in one eye. Instead, they gave each person a float for self-defense. At this moment, a figure appeared in the woods. It is the master of Grandpa, apparently already gone. Carrying an axe, he rushed over, but did not let the crowd come out. Decided to single out this female ghost. The two fought for more than 700 rounds. One-eyed is clearly invincible. The female ghost slashed down with an axe. Instead, she flipped her blindfold. A golden light shot out. The female ghost of the hood is very happy. Unexpectedly, this female ghost was too angry. The gossip broke down in an instant. Lao Dao also slammed into the door. When Grandpa Tai opened his eyes again, sitting in front of him was our benefactor Li Luotang. He said that the landlord had lied to One Eye. Did not explain the truth of the tragic death of the female ghost. That's how all lives are taken care of. As for the female ghost, it was sealed by the benefactor with a British fruit tree. It takes generations of good deeds to eliminate resentment. But this female ghost will still come out for revenge in the future. Years later, the day I was born, the benefactor reappeared. Give Grandpa a box to you. And advised, as long as the female ghost appears, immediately burn the talisman in the box. Until I was 18 years old. Strange things finally found me. Grandpa died, but I'm not sad at all. I even want to take a bite. Meat buns on the altar, but the father on the side. But he just slapped me in the face. Let me hurry back to my room. Be honest with yourself. I don't understand. Why people outside? They all have good wine and good meat. And I can't even eat a meat bun. After the village people left in the evening. So I searched for my grandfather in the house. Not in the living room. There is no one in the yard either. Not even Grandpa's bedroom. I lay on my grandfather's bed, yelling, Grandpa, where have you been? Right behind him. Suddenly, Grandpa's voice came. Look what I've brought you. Aren't you going to eat meat buns? Grandpa's pale face was a little scary. I was just about to ask Grandpa where he had just been. Kung Fu in the blink of an eye. He was nowhere to be seen again. Only one meat bun remained. Prove that Grandpa just came. Grandpa is so nice. Brought me my favorite meat buns. I'm eating meat buns while eating, while continuing to look for Grandpa. When I came to the living room, I found out. Now the room is full of people who can play with me. Just when I was having a lot of fun, I suddenly noticed a large black box in the center of the room. I climbed up on the stool to see what was inside, but accidentally knocked over the ever-bright lamp on the sole of his foot. As soon as the ever-bright light slipped away, the room immediately became gloomy. I only realized when I looked into the box. It's a weird bed. I jumped into the box and was about to lie down. I saw a familiar figure standing in front of the machine. I hurried over to see what my grandfather was doing. I saw my grandfather holding a match in his hand and wiping it constantly, and muttered that I wanted to light it sooner. Otherwise, he will not be able to find his way for a while. I screamed in fright at my grandfather's strange behavior. Quickly shook the sleeping father on the side. Daddy, wake up. Grandpa is so weird. The last candle was extinguished. The fingers I was playing with just now all seemed to be alive. All came towards me in black. The next second, I was surrounded by a room full of finger heads. I hugged my dad and told him to wake up quickly. Just when I was hopeless and helpless, Grandpa suddenly yelled and got out. He slapped on the table with a frightened thud. directly smashed the cup on the table to the ground. Just when I was crying so much, it was my mother who suddenly appeared behind me, pinching my dad's ear. Ask the doll why she slept in the morning hall. Let you keep a spirit, and you will be able to sleep. The ever-bright lights are extinguished, so hurry up and light them. I don't know why, though. The scary stuff is gone. But I know Grandpa at the moment, sleeping in that strange bed. I noticed it when I went back to the nest room. A figure carrying a lantern walked farther and farther away. I followed and saw that it was my grandfather. I asked my grandfather where he was going. Let him wait for me. But Grandpa said that the sky was fading. Let me not come along. Grandpa is leaving. Let's go back. Obedient. I looked at my grandfather's back and told him to slow down. Remember to look back at me more often on the way. Do you believe that the living can also be seen? Every time the man fainted, he would go out of his body. Then take the little brother Nyo to Ma to hook the soul. It's just a mouth-watering amount of weirdness. It is recommended that friends form a group to watch together. It happened in 1995 in a small village in Henan province. At that time, most of the villagers still made a living from farming, and life in the countryside is very laid back. After the busy farming season, most of them almost at night, they would get together to drink and play cards. And there is a middle-aged man in the village. I usually like to drink and play cards to join in the fun. No matter who has a card game or a red and white celebration in the village, he is always indispensable. Someday, Lowly was fighting with the two at the entrance of the village. After playing the last round, Lowly dropped the big card and thought about collecting money and leaving. But at this moment, his body plummeted suddenly. My whole body began to tremble. Immediately after that, his body was crooked, and he lost consciousness and fell. Several people present were frightened when they saw Lowly suddenly faint. I was about to go to the village to find a barefoot doctor, but one of them was not in a hurry. He is a neighbor of Lowly's front and back rows. By him, Lowly's problem has been around for a long time. Often no matter what is in hand, in what place, say dizzy, but soon wake up. At first, everyone thought he had epilepsy, but according to him, he had an errand when he fainted. But everyone didn't believe it. Think he's bragging. What kind of bad can a big guy be? Just as everyone was chatting about angels, Lowly really staggered up from the table, and they saw that he was awake. Jokingly asked him which village he went to, and who he arrested. Lowly said that he should go to the next village to catch an old man who young bees respected. The crowd clearly didn't believe what he said, teasing Lowly there and bragging. But Li Zhongping, who was present, was shocked when he heard it, because he is from the next village, and there is an old man in the village who is not in good health these days. Then Lowly saw that it was too late. I said hello and went home, and Li Zhongping was still young at that time. For these cow ghosts, snake gods, things, still very interested. So he said hello to the crowd, chased after Lowly. Li Zhongping has been making progress with Lowly along the way, and Lowly is also a talkative person. The two of them chatted passionately in a few words. Then the two met as if they hated each other. I ordered a few side dishes at the tavern and drank wine. A few glasses of wine went down. Both of them opened their chatterboxes. Shan and Haibei began to chop. As soon as the two of them blew, it was more than 10 o'clock in the evening. It's also a little high. Li Zhongping saw that the time was almost up, led the topic to the market where Lowly went on a business trip. And Lowly was also drunk. He talked about his experience. Lowly said that when he was young, rescued a large bobcat from Orion. Unexpectedly, the lynx dragged the cat for him that night. The lynx said that he was the head of the underworld. In order to repay Lowly, prepared to wait for his longevity to approach, arranged for him to be the city god of this area. Li Zhongping was immediately interested after hearing this. Hurriedly asked, Lowly, then how did you guys go out of their way to catch the een? Lowly didn't hide it either. Say that every time I faint, the spirit will come out of the body. Then take the bullhead and horseface to the mission location to pick up people. Then the people were brought into the underworld by the bullhead and horseface, and his task is complete. Li Zhongping was also a little drunk at this time. Listening to Lowly's words is incredible. Straight to say he's bragging. Lowly drank too much. How can you stand this kind of agitation? I saw him pull out a small notebook. It is said that the people who remember it are all about to die. He had just said that he wanted to keep it a secret. He fell drunk on the table in a daze. Picked up his notebook and looked at it. Li Zhongping looked through it. I found that there were a lot of addresses and names written down in it. He even saw the names of acquaintances in several nearby villages. Just when Li Zhongping was in a daze, Lowly suddenly woke up at this time, yelled at Li Zhongping that he couldn't watch. Otherwise, you're going to be out of luck. This sudden sound frightened Li Zhongping's hands trembling. He dropped the little notebook on the soup plate in front of him, and Lowly screamed. He fell asleep on the table again. Li Zhongping immediately picked up the small notebook, only to find that the pages that remembered the people had been soaked with soup, and the words on it are so blurry that they can't be read clearly. Li Zhongping put the small notebook back in Lowly's pocket. Pretending not to know anything, he sent him home. About half a month later, Li Li Zhongbing was idle and bored, and went to the village to watch the villagers play cards. He saw that the old Li who loved to join in the fun was not there. He asked casually. Unexpectedly, the villagers said that he had gone crazy since he fainted last time. After hearing this, Li Zhongbing's heart was dusty. He faintly felt that Lao Li was crazy. It must have something to do with peeking at his little book. Then he went all over the village to find Lao Li. Li Zhongbing had completely believed what Lao Li said at this time, because he later confirmed it. The people on Lao Li's book have all passed away in the past few days. It didn't take long. Li Zhongbing saw Lao Li on the side of the road, and he's completely insane about it. Maybe it's like Lao Li himself said. He was punished for leaking the secret of heaven. Li Zhongbing was ashamed. Since then, he has often brought milk meat and shochu to the village to visit Lao Li. And Lao Li also died 5 years later. Before leaving, the other man came to his senses completely, said that he was going to the underworld to be an official. The whole village thought he was still talking nonsense. But Li Zhongbing knew. What he said was true. Maybe I'll see him in Hades after I die. This dog king is extremely fierce. At this time, they are confronting a black cat. I saw Chen Lao go whistling towards the honey forest. Suddenly I heard it. There were a few crazy dog barks in the woods. Only seen in the woods. There was a dark shadow scurrying around. Just when Chen Xiaogo and Lu Dagong were fierce, a dark shadow from the honey forest sprang out. First the black cat. It looked a little uncertain. Then I saw a big white dog. Led a pack of wild dogs out of the woods. Tightly surrounded the black cat. The black cat trembled with fright at this time. The big dog in the lead. He was covered in white hair. Very ferocious. There was a very large lump of flesh on the top of his head. The big dog didn't give the black cat a chance to breathe. Jumped directly and pounced viciously at the black cat. The bones were bitten off in an instant. Plus the sound of a black cat screaming. Listen to Chen Xiaogo and Lu Dagong. Suddenly the scalp went numb. That is, in the blink of an eye. This evil black cat. And died in the mouth of the great dog. The strange dog was holding the black cat's corpse. Glanced at old dog Chen. I wanted to leave with the dogs. Old guy, you can take the black cat corpse with you. Do you have to leave me with his eyes? A silent old dog Chen fired. The big dog that stayed on top of his head seems to be able to understand human speech. Stopped, looked back viciously. But it seems that he is very afraid of Chen Laogo. In the end, it was left with that eyeball. The three of them worked all night. Finally set foot on the way home. On the way, of course, Chen Xiaogo had to ask, Father, what's the use of your blind cat's eyes? I didn't expect Chen Laogo's words. This one is called a cat's eye master. Buried in the ground for 10 or 8 years. Can show the photons of the cat's eye. At that time, it will be worth tens of thousands of yuan, to say the least. Two young men heard. I almost dropped my jaw. Don't think about it yet. That's 10 years later. Old dog Chen put away the stones. Take the two young men and walk down the mountain. That's right, Dad. That weird dog. It doesn't look like a good thing. Don't talk nonsense. That's a corpse hound. But your savior. What a lifesaver. Throwing dogs. Something that specializes at throwing graves and eating the corpses of dead people. This guy robbed me of my marriage. He also said that he was not in the comment area. Leaving 3 dog heads to save their lives will take me away. And the cause of it all. It's all because I painted him a pair of glasses. After being rescued from the fire pit by Zhao Zilong, I asked him why he was covered in hair. Zilong said it was because I had dotted my eyes on the finger. Let him steal the soul of my 3 souls. If one of the 3 souls is missing, the cold will enter the body. If he hadn't arrived in time, I've long since become a human being, a ghost, and a ghost. He was also on the ground of the sacrificial hall. I found the strip of cloth on my body and thought of it. I asked him suspiciously. The strip of cloth had been in my pocket. How do you know I lost it? I saw it that day when you hid the strips of cloth. I smelled Uncle Nyo's poetry from this. Guess what message he might be trying to send to you. And when I was guarding outside the sacrificial hall, I saw a ghost eagle leading the 2. The child who opened the door for you walked towards Xiaolong's house. I followed the ghost eagle to the river and found out. It was full of fingers without eyes. So it is concluded that your Uncle Nyo was killed by the paper general. He knew that the paper would hurt people, and it would only be useful to draw his eyes himself. So draw an eye to warn you to beware of them. After hearing this, it dawned on me. Hurriedly asked Zilong what was going on with the ghost eagle. The ghost eagle must have something to do with the 2 paper ties. But he's only a few months old and hasn't gotten angry yet. I don't know what he was doing with those 2 kids. Leave that alone. Take advantage of being a big man now. Although it was night, there was still a faint yang energy. I'll summon you quickly. Otherwise, you're going to die. As soon as the words fell, the rain poured down outside the house. Zilong looked at the sky and fell south. It's raining a little wickedly. Now I have no choice but to wait for dawn. Physically and mentally exhausted, I quickly fell asleep next to Zilong. Someone outside suddenly let me go in the middle of the night. Chujuli Chujio, come with me. I was carried outside the house by the soul-like voice. When I looked up, It was the person who stole my soul. He gently hooked my hand. I followed in a daze. A moment later, we were at my mother's grave. Mother, you're all gone. I'm so sad to be left alone. I uncontrollably regrasped the words of the paper man. The next second, he suddenly picked up the stone and shouted, "The 9th day of the 1st month will go down to accompany you now." Paper men frantically chiseled their own heads out of stone. I can't help but join him. Die, 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 give me death. By this time I was covered in blood. Zhao Zilong appeared in time to break my hand. Then he jumped up and kicked the paper man in the head. "I'll greet you right now. I can't wait for daylight." With that, he bit his finger and drew a formation next to the paper figure, holding the spirit talisman and silently reciting to the home secretary, "Hurry up and call your soul on the 9th day of the 1st month. Let him come back quickly. My soul, you're coming back soon. Come back soon." A moment later, a puff of white smoke wafted from the finger. Stillness came into me, with the yin and yang gossip diagram wrapping me. I finally found my soul. It was already dark. Zilong was glad that it was also the first time I had performed the soul invitation technique. "I'm finally back with you." But before I could feel the joy of the rest of my life after the holiday, the words that refer to the human body directly make me sweat coldly. "Zilong, look. Written on the back of the person is my grandfather's name." Hearing this, Zhao Zilong shouted, "Oops, get down the hill quickly." This old witch actually wanted to make the prince of the Qing dynasty into meatballs. Legend has it that during the Guangxi period, there were 3 female demons who relied on eating human flesh to practice evil arts. Lao Dashan Hong specializes in witchcraft, so that teachers and students do not mash, and their sword on the side. The second child, Pai Li Hong, is responsible for cooking with various evil methods. The old third official, Li Hong, is good at using ecstasy, seduce passers-by to become their prey. And the old woman in front of her is the second of the 3 sisters who know people. But these 3 female demons were killed 100 years ago by the imperial court's inner priest Qingyue Qinxian. How do you appear in the parts? Is worthy of being the prince of the Qing dynasty. It's a bit of a knowledge. The second grandmother is here to find you today. Grandma wants to have someone with your dungeon. Hand it over and keep you safe. Otherwise, Grandma's next dish is the 2 of you. You want me to hand over Qingyue? It's impossible. Little prince, I don't want him. I want to betray me and my eldest sister's old third official Li Hong endures. And so on is the invasion of the imperial court. How can it be in my underground palace? It seems that you don't know much about the affairs of the underground palace. Even if he ascends the throne, he is just a puppet emperor. Hearing this, Xiaoxi stood up and said, "I know Shan Li Hong. You let us out. I'll help you find her. I am a descendant of Mu family. Definitely won't lie to you." "Girl, you said my eldest sister, she's still alive." "This is true. If you dare to lie to me, I move my fingers. Admit both of you worse off than dead." Let's talk about Xiaoxi and Fuda's belly. It's a sharp pain. The meat and the noodles you just ate. I'm all mixing people. Dare to lie to me. I will let these broken souls torment you to death. Fudo, who was sweating profusely in pain, roared at Hai Li Hong. "Old witch, something's coming at me. Don't touch my concubine. I still want to protect your concubine. Worry about yourself first. Girl, I'll give you 3 days. Bring my eldest sister to see me at Sun Moon House in 3 days. Otherwise, I'll finish cleaning up this little prince, and we'll come to you to settle accounts." Mui Wetian listened to Xiaoxi. I was amazed at what I encountered in the spirit world. We've all seen that old lady. She quit her job on weekdays to be a vegetarian. How is it possible to eat people? In the past, the spiritual realm was full of people. You said you only saw it this time. An old lady and a blood-red sky. Could it be that the female devil has painted the town? Xiaoxi, don't move. Uncle will help you clean up the dirt in your stomach. After that, Mu Qintian flew the black hat away, buckled on Xiaoxi's head. As Mu Chengtian's spell landed, a large amount of yin shi instantly gathered inside the hat. Dust to dust, dust to dust. Let's get back to nature. The sun and moon house where the sea is red and let Xiaoxi take. But it's the territory of the beggars. We can release the old lady's pigeons. Let one adversary help us get rid of the other. At the same time, the beggars helped the sun and moon in a house. The leader of the beggar gang took Hai Li Hong to a hut and said, "The second grandmother is mighty. This time, the matter of the prince of the Qing dynasty is troublesome to you. I've got some snacks here to treat you." Not bad. The second grandmother likes it. I don't know the scene in front of me. They were all watched by a spirit in the sky. And the owner of Shaoling is the old 3 Jupiter Tian of the Mu family. Just when the second grandmother was ready to enjoy a snack, a few dolls suddenly appeared and took it as the main one. Don't touch them. Dare to move and instantly turn you into a walking corpse. Not far away, in the woods, there are many treasures of the Lord Vruto. I'm hurrying towards here. The old smoker sleeps at night. A pregnant woman came to the door. Actually gave birth to 4 children in his house in one go. The pregnant woman was about to leave after giving birth and picking up her baby. What the hell is going on here? Before this happened, the old smoker's wife hasn't died yet. They had dinner that day. He sat on the Kong and chatted. Suddenly, There was a loud bang in the sky. The real windows are framed and sitting. The old smoker thought it was a little strange. It's not supposed to rain this weather. So he moved to the window and looked out. And I saw that it was windy and rainy outside. And it was accompanied by huge lightning bolts. It looks unusually scary. So he told his father to quickly pack up his things and go to bed. The old couple smoked the oil lamp. I hadn't slept for a few minutes. There was a sharp knock at the door. The old smoker saw this until something was about to happen. He asked out loud who was knocking on the door. She was answered by a woman's plea for help. Hear this. The old smoker knew it had to be opened. He lit the oil lamp, put on his shoes, and prepared to open the door. But as soon as the door opened, he was dumbfounded. Outside the door stood a pregnant woman with a big belly. The whole body was soaked with rain. The old smoker's father also got up and walked over. He saw the woman's pitiful look. Without saying a word, he helped him in. After playing, I learned that the woman went the wrong way back to her parents' house. At this time, the woman suddenly covered her stomach and screamed in pain. It looks like it's about to give birth. The old smoker's dead. And behold, the woman's water was broken. So he asked the old smoker to prepare things. He was going to deliver the woman. The old smoker took a look. The woman didn't say anything. I turned around and went to boil water to pick up the knife. The boss of the old smoker. When I was young, I didn't help deliver babies. So it's very easy to sit on. The old smoker sat by the stove, quietly watching with a cigarette gun in his mouth. It didn't take a while, and the child was born. But what my wife didn't expect was, another child came out of the house. He thought it was a dragon and phoenix fetus. I also picked up another child. But then a third popped up. Seeing this, the old smoker told his wife not to panic. Take as many as you want. My wife picked up a total of 4 children. Strangely, the children were unusually loud. The woman had just given birth less than 2 minutes ago. So he got up and said he was leaving. How could my wife let her go? A woman who has just given birth needs to rest. But the old smoker told his wife not to stop him. Let her go. My wife was immediately anxious. This whether you let her go. She's going to die. The old smoker didn't explain when he saw this. Just let my wife take a look. This thunder is not to approve them. Hear this. My wife glanced out the window. This thunder really kept chopping around the house. Only then did Dad realize that this woman was weird. Between the old couple of calligraphy and paintings, the woman was ready to take the baby and leave. Now Dad didn't stop the woman, but the woman had just opened the door. As soon as lightning arrived, it struck into the house. Frightened, she hurriedly took a few steps back. Seeing this, the old smoker stepped forward and took off his coat, then put it on the dead child. This time the lightning didn't slash the woman again. The woman was about to go into the woods. Turning back to the old smoker, he told him where he lived. Let the old smoker remember to stop the clothes. That's when Dad asked why. The old smoker told him, 1 litter can give birth to so many. It's either a fox or a yellow-skinned man. The next day, the old smoker finished searching the mountain and was ready to return to the room. I suddenly remembered the words that the woman had left yesterday when she was leaving. It was still early in the day, so I wanted to see what kind of debate the woman was. He lived according to the woman's instructions. I really found my clothes. When he picked up his clothes, he found a few grains of gold stuffed inside. I knew it was a thank you gift from the woman. The old smoker didn't go. Instead, he hid behind a tree and stared at the big stump. It didn't take a while. 5 yellow skins came out of it. Only then did the old smoker know. I hurt what I helped that day. A torrent of resentment was formed, which was extremely evil, enveloping the entire textile mill in it. I nervously ran down the path of the textile mill. Although under the shelter of the 12 Fingers ice, everything in the arena seems to be peaceful. But behind me it was as hard as a mountain in Baylor. The ghosts of the dead gathered more and more, and I was overwhelmed. At the same time, the Ball Juniors were suddenly stopped and humiliated by Boss Gene. His eyes were red and his body was strange, staring at a few people like zombies. The 3 bald elders immediately merged to activate pure young energy, trying to scare Boss Kim away with a body of muscle. Boss Gene tilted his head and looked at a few people. The next second, he was beaten to the ground by the muscular men. But he's a zombie, how can he be afraid of this? With a thud, he jumped up and rushed towards the 3 of them. The speed was so fast that it formed a wave of suspicion around several people. When Boss Gene reappeared, they were covered in bruises. At the same time, I was also brought into the dream realm by holding hands and locking solar rays. A troop of people slowly walked towards me. Behind me was a wet sea. Before I could react, the spear swooped and pierced through my body. Then the man who pierced me swung his spear vigorously. A surge picked me up and flew the tree. The caster has been corrupted by nightmares. The 12-fingered men who were guarding in all directions also began to rout. They were all defeated one by the ghosts and ghosts. They roared with the last of their strength. Through the millennium, it is still a big defeat. I'm not reconciled. Just when I was about to be shattered by the sky, a pair of big hands patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good apprentice. It seems that the teacher forgot to tell you how to use this formation. Have you ever heard of the Tianjin clown resurrection incident that shocked the whole country?" The man sent his son to the clown. The son actually ate raw meat in the middle of the night. I later asked the psychiatrist to find out. The doll was actually made of human skin. What the hell is going on here? Welcome to the Ghost Case's Return of the Clown. The story takes place in 2014. The location is in a residential building in Tonggu District, Tianjin. That night, the cow and horse, who had been on a business trip for half a year, returned home. He is a senior cleaner. I often travel to major hotels abroad. Every time he comes back, the son would ask him for a gift. This is also the only place where Nyoma can compensate his son. But the clown doll he brought back this time almost killed his son. After receiving the doll from my father, the cow's behavior began to get weird. Stay in the bedroom all day and don't talk about it. He also talks to himself from time to time. Nyoma saw that his son liked the gift he gave so much. It's called a pride in my heart. But his wife is like a flower. But I always felt that something was wrong. I didn't expect it to be just a few days. Strange things started to happen. On that day, the cow and horse were preparing to go out. His wife Ruhua suddenly walked over. She said her son had been particularly strange lately. It's like getting into a shoe. As soon as Nyoma heard this, he said. He turned to look at his son in the bedroom. Then he came to his son, reached out and patted him on the shoulder. But what Nyoma didn't expect was, the son suddenly turned his head, stared at him viciously. At this time, the cow egg eyeball is hyperemic. It's a big lap from the other day. Nyoma saw this and learned his wife. How long did the son start to become like this? Ruhua replied immediately. It started after you gave him that doll. As soon as Nyoma heard this, he said, immediately stepped forward and snatched the doll from his son's hand. But the son's next reaction, it made him feel a little creepy. Then he saw the cow and the egg grasping the arm of the cow and the horse. The mouth was wide open like a wild beast. Ruhua saw this scene, hurriedly stepped forward and patted her husband on the shoulder and said, "Husband, don't take that clown. I've tried it several times. That's how my son reacts every time." As soon as Nyoma heard this, he said, "I can only return the doll to my son first." Then he walked out of the bedroom with his wife. Waited until the living room. Tears fell like rain all of a sudden. Seeing this, Nyoma proposed, "I'll find an expert for my son tomorrow." And yet it was that same evening. An even stranger thing happened. It was about 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. Ruhua gets up and goes to the toilet. But as she passed by the living room, suddenly I heard a strange sound in the kitchen. So she went to the kitchen to check on the situation. The son was found squatting in front of the refrigerator to eat at this time. See this scene. Ruhua asked her son if he was hungry. "Do you want to cook some food for her?" But when the son turns his head, she was immediately frightened and collapsed on the ground. I saw that my son was looking at a piece of raw meat at this time. There was blood all around the eyes and mouth. However, what shocked Ruhua even more was that the son stood up. "Looks like I want to eat it." He saw his son coming towards him. Ruhua was extremely frightened in her heart. That's when it happened. Nyoma suddenly hugged his son from behind. Can be restricted in time. Cow eggs are still the same crazy. I kept shouting that I wanted to eat meat. The cow and horse were strong, holding the child and not drinking all night. Early the next morning, I took the child to see a psychiatrist. The doctor saw the manic appearance of the cow egg. I injected him with a stable waste. Then I asked in detail about the cause of the child. So the cow and the horse told me what had happened in the past few days. 1510 told the doctor everything. The doctor listened to the story of the cow and horse. He asked to see the clown doll. However, when the doctor saw the doll, his face immediately fell. Then he told the cow and the horse, "Cow egg's bizarre behavior. It's this clown doll that caused it." He said the doll was supposed to be from Mexico. It is made with the skin and hair of a real person. This doll is what they use to house the souls of the dead, especially those children who die at birth. If someone gets along with the doll for a long time, the doll will start sucking his anger. In the long run, that person will become an evil spirit. Wait until the doctor finishes talking. Nyoma looked at the doll and became angry. That same evening, he quietly came to the park alone. After he threw the clown doll on the ground, he began to sprinkle gasoline on him. The doll was then lit with a lighter. The doll was immediately enveloped in flames. Cows and horses don't know if this will work, but he couldn't do it any other way. After a while, the clown doll turned into a pile of black powder. Fortunately, it really works. The sun is visibly improving. Nyoma was strong and dispelled the idea of working abroad again. She didn't want that to happen anymore. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how little money you have. It is enough for the family to be safe. 40 years after the girl's death, she is still dissatisfied. The old man couldn't bear it, so he dug his chi out of the foundation. It was reburied under a large locust tree. I didn't expect it to be from now on. The girl's soul has been with her grandson for more than 20 years. Now it is difficult to cremate the girl's body. There was another accident during the cremation process. The staff ran out of the operation room in a panic. Shout until the girl came to life. Unfortunately, I approached the incinerator and took a look. Twisted his head. His face seemed to be full of grievance. This strange scene. It also scared me to the ground. Just then outside the house, suddenly, there was a cacophony of discussions. Everyone looks at the sky. All of them looked terrified. It turned out to be the chimney mouth of the crematorium. A cloud of black gas condensed. The next second, that black gas, it turned into a human face. It seemed to be smiling at me and Liang Shuyi. See this scenario. I hurriedly let Liang Shuyi look at the little red on your body. Still not there. I checked again, and sure enough, the little red was gone. It seems that he has been reincarnated and re-entered the cycle of reincarnation. After removing Red's ashes, we were going to bury him with his parents. But on the way, I happened to meet the old Taoist priest of the Tailong Reservoir last time. The Taoist priest called himself Inchang. After hearing about my skills in the Tailong Reservoir, I came to ask for advice. After a brief period of business blowing, when the old Taoist priest heard that Xiaohong was cremated from the coffin just now, his face turned a little pale. It's hard to wonder if he's been in this situation before. At that time, his doctor friend told him that it was called fried sperm. It is the result of the rapid contraction of the nerves by the flame after death. Although science can explain, but he thinks that people who encounter such things will definitely be out of luck for a few days. Send away the old time. The two of us were really unlucky on the way back from delivering the ashes. I was chased by a car behind me on the main road. When I got out of the car, I saw that this person was still a drunken fool. After taking the man to the hospital, Dr. Liang and I limped home. On the way, I happened to see a Zhengguo massage shop. I thought about going inside to massage the back that had just been bruised. When I entered the house, I saw that the proprietress had an indecent face. Liang Shou and I turned around and were about to run away. Was stopped by the enthusiastic hostess. Everything, give me a free massage. After the massage, I was suddenly attracted by the hostess's hair. The woman's hair was shiny blonde, full of yang. At first glance, it has absorbed the foreign fate of many men. If I can rob this fortune, it will definitely help a lot in the future. Thinking of this, I took the initiative to bring up a group of proprietresses to press their heads, then secretly perform the MRT technique. Suck all her fortune into me. When everything was done, the proprietress still didn't know, and to send me out in person. But at the gate of this world, two men suddenly came. They seemed to be specifically looking for trouble with the proprietress of the hostess. Just when I was about to take advantage of the opportunity to slip away, the proprietress was actually cut to the ground by them, fell directly in a pool of blood. I couldn't help but shudder when I saw this. Could this be the consequence of being robbed of fortune? Seeing the proprietress with a blue face, she looked like she was suffocating. Liang Shuyi at the door also rushed over when he heard the news. Seeing this scene, Liang Shuyi hurriedly took out the pin he was carrying. Then he stabbed the woman in the throat hard. This was followed by the creation of a simple artificial airway with a pin holder. The symptoms that made the boss lady suffocate were alleviated. Soon after waiting for the ambulance to arrive at the scene, the doctor was surprised to see the pin holder around the woman's neck. There was a shortage of men and women coming to their hospital. Let Liang Shuyi think about going to their hospital to work. It seems that Liang Shuyi's luck has gradually improved after Xiaohong left. The next day, when we went to the police station to make a note of yesterday's rear-end collision, I happened to bump into a group of people who were arguing fiercely with Captain Shan. After a brief understanding, it is known. Recently, a bus demon appeared in Tanglan City. He often attacked bus drivers who were driving in the middle of the night with a hammer, and the man seemed to have only half a face. After dealing with the traffic accident, it was already evening. Dr. Liang is on his way back to the pet clinic. I've been thinking about half faces, because Dr. Liang said it before. The man who collided with the rat demon in the crematorium was also half a face. Come to the door of the pet clinic. It was a man in black who suddenly approached Dr. Liang, and he is the legendary half-faced man. Without the slightest communication, the man directly picked up the hammer. A snap broke Dr. Liang's arm, and I threw a tin box at him. Took the opportunity to pull young Beast's clothes back. It's like explaining something to him. After some chatter, the man actually left here. After helping veterinarian Liang treat the wound, Captain Chun, who heard the news, also rushed to the scene. Although I don't know the relationship between a rat demon and a half-faced, but I'm still convinced that the rat demon is not a bad rat. Follow Captain Chun to a meeting to discuss the half-faced man on the way. The rat demon lay weak in my arms. A lot of hair on his body is also falling out. It seems that it should be injured by the origin. When we get to the meeting place, I found the place where this meeting took place. It turned out to be Captain Su's house that Rocky and I stole last time. Several police officers and Captain Su fiercely discussed the half-faced man's hidden body, but I didn't have the heart to listen at all. I don't know how long it took. Suddenly, I noticed that the rat demon under the table was gone. Immediately after that, Captain Su's wife screamed. I hurried over to take a look. It was found that the rat demon was biting the poodle of the Su team's family. A bloody coffin was dug up on the construction site and buried vertically. The next day, the workers present were wrapped into rice dumplings, and the foreman of the contractor who did not hide in the safe house also died one after another. I was commissioned by Hades to investigate the situation at the unfinished construction site. Unexpectedly, as soon as I arrived on the second floor, I was targeted by a woman who behaved strangely. The woman screamed and crawled towards me. She had to drag me and her to the coffin to get married. Seeing this scene, I hurriedly left in a common area. I didn't dare to refuse her. Then he turned around and ran downstairs. Although the scene just now scared me so much that I almost collapsed. But in order to complete the task assigned by Hades, I still decided to go up the second floor from the other side of the stairs. When she reached the second floor, the female ghost had disappeared. Seeing this, I quickly searched the room on the second floor. Knocking on the doors of a few rooms was unharmed. Bursts of black liquid suddenly came from the women's bathroom. I bumped into the gust to get to the female side. It was found that the cry came from the last pit on the female side. Trembling, I came to me. When I opened the door, I found a girl of 5 or 6 years old crying. She kept muttering why she couldn't see. I kindly stepped forward to comfort me. The next second, the girl turned her head and her eyes were gouged out. She grabbed my arm. Li Xing asked who had eaten her eyes, and let me give her my eyes back. I shook off the girl's hand and ran out the door. I stood at the door for a long time, not daring to knock. I didn't expect the sound of clanging to come from inside. In order to complete the task as soon as possible, a strong man fear knocked on the door. Before the room could react, there was a voice from the hallway. When I looked closely, it was a female ghost with 4 limbs and arms. Before my scalp was numb, I figured out the situation. Suddenly a pair of hands reached out from the room in front of me and grabbed my shirt, dragged me in at a critical juncture. The eldest female ghost followed closely into the room, kept twisting his head in search of the breath of the living. And under the bed, I was already covered by a pair of small hands. This subway line goes straight to Ghost Gate Pass, and the passengers in the car are all unjust souls who did not hide in the safe house. And I was dragged by Hades into this hearse. You also have to kill all the unjust souls in the car. I saw a wagon of demons coming at me. I hurriedly pulled out the candle from my pocket, set it on fire to dispel the spirits. The moment the candle was lit, the demons stopped attacking. Seeing this, I decided to take the opportunity to explore the entire carriage. I had just taken a few steps towards the train, and a gloomy wind was blowing. Nearly blew out the candle in my hand. It seems that the further you go inside, the more dangerous it becomes. The next steps must be more cautious. When I got to the end of the carriage, I found that the door was not open, and the candle in his hand suddenly went out. I immediately turned my head to look, only to find that those unjust souls just now were gone. Just when I was confused, the train has reached the first station in downtown Taipei, and a man with a lot of breath entered the carriage. When I looked back, I realized that it was the puppeteer of the inner puppet house. The man asked in a low voice if it was Lao Jia. I pressed my hat to try to cover my face. The hand in the pocket also held the exorcism knife tightly. When the man saw that I didn't answer, he said to himself, "These things controlled my condition though, but it also made it impossible for me to maintain my human form. Come help me." With that, I pulled out my dagger and stabbed him. A thud sliced through his bloody left hand. After recognizing that I was not Lao Jia, the man was furious, and I stabbed again. After a few brief encounters, the puppet corpse, which knew that it was not an opponent, pulled out a tube of hair. Pour it all straight into your mouth. Seeing that he was about to mutate, I rushed at the man to try to stop him, but as soon as I got close to him, I was slapped away by a giant hand, and the puppet corpse has completely turned into a half-human, half-ghost monster. The power of the mutated puppet corpse instantly skyrocketed. I had to keep dodging to find his flaws. I finally got around behind him. I immediately pulled out the charm and tried to get rid of it, but the monster's mouth actually protruded several tongues several meters long. It was too late to dodge. The puppet is the ghost of my son. It suddenly appeared on my shoulder. He jumped up and cried at his father's mouth. The moment the boy entered the giant mouth, the puppet is an instant illusion. A crisp "dad" sounded in the dark. The man looked around. I found that my son, who had only half of his face left, was staring at him. Cremation is now a common practice for people these days, but the older generation has always been obsessed with cremation. Fear that physical damage will have an impact on reincarnation. This happened in the house of a family in our village. Lao Li's family has 3 brothers. The old father, who is nearly 80 years old, saw that he would not be able to do it. So the 3 brothers gathered around their father, waiting for the old man to leave a word. In addition to explaining the distribution of the family property, the old man explained. Also specially told the 3 brothers. The fortune teller said that I was a wooden life. It cannot be cremated, otherwise the warrior will not be able to super live. You must bury me. The voice landed. The old man had 2 legs and a crane with fine blood. The 3 brothers were grieving and grieving. Zhang mentioned the funeral of his old father, but that was the state to implement the cremation policy. It's not so easy for the old man here to be buried. For this matter, the 3 brothers of the Li family also specially asked the village chief to help. But the national policy is tight. The village chief didn't dare to make any moves. I'm afraid that I will lose my job for this. The 3 brothers of the Li family can't help it. The old man can only be sent to cremation in accordance with national policy. After cremation, the 3 brothers followed the customs of the countryside, chose a feng shui treasure in the ancestral land, and buried the old man. But just 3 days after the old man was buried, there was an inexplicable fire in the village, and it was the old Li family who was burned. The fire was great. When it is extinguished, only housing prices remain. And Boss Li was also burned to death in the house. At that time, many villagers witnessed it. Boss Li's body had been burned to charcoal. It gives you goosebumps when you see it. The villagers all felt that this old Li family was really unlucky. This old man just died, and the little one died. But at that time, no one thought otherwise. I thought it was caused by an accident at home, but it was just a week after Boss Li's death. Another fire broke out in the village, and it was Li's second house that caught fire. Neighbors, young and old, all carried canisters to help extinguish the fire. But the fire was too big. Wait until it is extinguished. The houses have been burned to the shelves. The Lauer's daughter-in-law, Yinzi, escaped by luck. I don't know if it's because I'm frightened. I kept muttering that it was the old man who came back and set the fire. He said that in the middle of the night, he saw Li Lauer suddenly sit up from the bed. You shouldn't call him anything. Both eyes were still rolling. He hurriedly got up to see if Li Lauer was uncomfortable, but as soon as he put his hand on Li Lauer, he threw it away. I kept saying things like unfilial son. Then Li Lauer jumped to the table, pick up the lighter, and start lighting it against the curtains. The swallow rushed forward to grab the lighter, was pushed aside by Li Lauer. He kept saying that he was going to burn his unfilial son. Soon, the things that were still in the house were punched by Li Lauer. Look at the flames that are getting higher and higher. The swallow turned around in fright and ran to the door, but he had just stepped out on the front foot. Flames burst out of the door. The swallow escaped from the fire. He glanced back at Li Lauer briefly, found that Li Lauer was being grabbed by a person in the flames, and that person looks like an old man who has long since died. The 3rd child of the Li family was not calm when he learned the news, because he knows this is the revenge of the dead old man against them, and the next one will be his turn. In order for Li Laosan to escape, the 2 hired a gentleman who was watching the matter to help. The gentleman said that the old man was because the hospital was not completed. A breath of resentment turned into a ghost. Although it stands to reason that tiger poison is not a word, but the ghost is different. He couldn't tell the difference between good and bad. There is only one breath of resentment. Li Laosan and his wife were shocked when they heard this. Mr. Chiu thought of a way to save him. The gentleman took the money, drew a few talismans for Li Laosan, let him take it with him, said it could help him get through. And be a month later, Li Laosan still had an accident. He was in a car accident at the time. The strange thing is that the car immediately burst into flames. Li Laosan, who was in a coma, was also burned alive in the car. In less than half a year, all 4 of the Li family are dead, and they all died in the fire. Then put 1099 coins in the water. Finally, soak the right eye in the basin for 3 seconds. In this way, I really became a bright boy with ghost eyes. But naively, I thought it was just ordinary inflammation, because this method was told by a good friend that it was used to take time off and skip class. After a day of gaming in an internet cafe, Dezhuang and I are also preparing to go home and sleep. But halfway through, I suddenly stopped, because there was a woman on the bench in the distance who kept staring at me. That strange look seemed to eat me. Dezhuang asked me what I was looking at. I turned to her and gestured to the woman on the bench, but Dezhuang didn't see anything. I looked at it and found out the woman's figure really disappeared in place. Although I was very puzzled, but I didn't stay any longer. When I got home, I fell asleep. I don't know how long it took. I had a tingling pain in my right eye. I couldn't bear it anymore and ripped off my blindfold. Go to the mirror and check the condition of your right eye. The next second, a blurry figure suddenly appeared behind me. Cover your left eye. It becomes clearer. What the hell is that? I fought back my fear and slowly turned my head. It's a woman. Very familiar feeling. It was the one I met at night. The woman looked at me for a while. He opened his mouth and asked me if I recognized the word. If you don't know me, help me make up for it. I was so frightened by the scene in front of me that I was left without a master, until the mother was woken up by the screams in the bathroom. Only then did I find that I had fainted. The next day, I immediately found the outfit that taught me this trick. Asked her where she learned this method. After understanding the ins and outs of things, she found a post on the internet that made her eyes inflamed. Although there is no way to find the poster, but one of the comments below caught my attention. People were warned not to try this method. She must know something. In order to survive, I immediately contacted him to meet offline. A few hours later, a man in sunglasses showed up for the appointment. Seeing the way I looked, it didn't take long for him to look like this. In a few days you'll be like me. From the mouth of a man. This is a spell called non-visual. It can also be said to be a psychotoxin. The more time you see, the more you see. He was not liberated until he was scared to death, or completely blinded, because I only opened one eye. So there is still a glimmer of hope to become a normal person again. The step is to close your eyes after sunset today, and before sunrise tomorrow. In order to survive, I plan to try the man's sword shadow. But does that really work? The vicious abbot is a cultivator. Every night to dilute the woman's soul. In the end, he actually stretched out his claws to the nuns in the temple. The little nun finally escaped from the temple and went down the mountain to return to the world. Unexpectedly, he was surrounded by the old monks who followed him in a barber shop. Uncle Liao saw that the monk outside the door was aggressive and wanted to take the little nun away. He walked to the door and made a strange gesture towards a few silver monks. The next second, they seemed to see something terrible. They all left the barber shop in a huff. After the silver monk left, I asked Uncle Liao suspiciously what he meant by the gesture just now. Uncle Liao explained that it was a Buddhist mudra. That is, the meaning of the head crane stick. The group of silver monks were afraid of Buddha, so they didn't continue to make up words. After settling the matter of the silver monk, Uncle Liao called me to buy some food and come back. It can be regarded as suppressing the shock of the little nun. Looking at the table of hamburgers and fries, Rocky and I drooled. But the little nun swallowed and foamed, and had no intention of eating. I didn't take a bite of the vegetarian food I bought for her. Just took a shallow sip of the drink that Uncle Liao handed her. At night, I tried my best to please the little nun with a 3-inch snake that was not rotten. It wasn't until 1 o'clock in the morning that they went back to their rooms to rest. After returning to the room, I also specially found a big flower that my mother used for my wedding. I'm going to send the little nun over to add a little favorability. Just when I was full of confidence and thought I could move her, but I saw a terrible scene. The body of the little nun sits on a stool. The neck has become longer for dozens of meters, floating in midair. This strange scene really scared me enough. After relieving himself, he felt that the little nun's posture was quite cute. I even want to reach out and touch it. His big neck, which was several meters long. Just when I'm going to stretch out my hand, a stone book suddenly appeared. I saw him slowly pull out a roll. The bandages seemed to have been prepared. The brush flew out towards the little nun, directly rolled up his long neck. Then he wrote a bell around his neck. When everything is done, the little nun also slowly opened her eyes. C2 Bigman, tie yourself into a rice dumpling. He was very surprised, constantly writhing his body. I want to break free, but the more he struggled, the tighter the bandage on the neck. It turned out that this thing was Uncle Liao's secret weapon, and he abstained from it. Only Uncle Liao can untie it. When Yen said this, and the little nun told the truth, it turned out that he was sent to a nunnery by his parents when he was a child. Later, a senior sister asked him if he wanted to be vulgar. If you want to return to the world, you have to practice a special exercise. The senior sister told him that this exercise was an opportunity given by the Buddha to his disciples, but don't reveal it to outsiders. After understanding the situation, Uncle Liao sighed. Nan went to the little nun to learn the exercises. In fact, it is a South Sea magic that is not complacent. People who practice this exercise first have longer necks. After that, it can be used to get into the bird. Finally, he stretched out his hand and separated one and became red. You can travel through the dark night to absorb the essence of heaven and earth. And the person who practices this exercise has one characteristic. You just can't eat cooked food. This is also the reason why Uncle Liao asked me to buy a hamburger at that time. And the coke he handed to the little nun secretly added demon-breaking grass. It can allow people who practice witchcraft to show their own skills unconsciously. After hearing this, the little nun threw herself down and fell to her knees. Let Uncle Liao save his life. It turned out that the little nun was found in the nunnery in the past few years. Every other year, nun and selects a nun to send to the Castle Peak Temple next door. It is said that it is to let the sea green mage inside spend the winter and enter the shed. Until one day, he had diarrhea in the middle of the night and went to the toilet in the Beck Mountain. I stumbled upon 2 monks carrying a dried corpse to the vegetable garden, and let the 2 old nuns be loaded into the vat under the vegetable garden. And that body was the same as Jingy's autopsy that was sent to Qingshan Temple a few days ago. So the little nun fled down the mountain in a hurry that night, found Uncle Liao, and prepared to grow hair and return to customs. I was amazed to hear what he said. Noisy asked Liao Shu to call the police quickly. Let Wu Biao arrest this group of demon monks. As soon as the words fell, Liao Shu happened to receive a call from Wu Biao. He said that he was in prison and wanted to see me. Grandpa's graveyard contains the coffin of King Friday. He was still a dragon and tiger heavenly master who arrived at home before his death. In order to find out where the grandfather's grave is, Zhang Li and I came to the underground Yogong town that he had excavated. Just as we were about to reach the middle of the town's eye, a red-haired zombie tugged at my collar. But the master turned around and kicked him away. After a short battle, the red-haired zombie was successfully subdued by Zhang Li. But before he died, he suddenly spat out a breath of moisture from his mouth. Wake up all the zombies hanging on the roof of the cave. Seeing this, Master asked me to go to the front and wait for him first. When he finished dealing with the red-haired ghost, he joined me. I don't know how long I ran and I was just about to turn back. A huge wave of heat erupted, and Master gradually appeared in my field of vision. Continue walking forward for a while. Not far away, a small bronze pass appeared. I saw Zhang Li say to me with a serious face, I know why your grandfather built your mother's grave on top of it. This small coffin contains a placenta. Below is the cold underground spring water. Next to it are the roots of the old locust tree. These three things are combined. It is used to gather in spirits. So your mother is in such a grave. I don't want to get pregnant. When Yin said this, I was furious. It turned out to be this thing. Caused my mother to give birth to a younger brother. After venting his anger at the coffin, Zhang Li and I successfully arrived at the location of the middle palace. I saw an iron pot in the cave. Something is cooking. It looks like it's Grandpa's room oil. But who did this? Zhang Li explained that there are two possibilities. One is that Grandpa has already calculated it. I use it with my own body to provide a day. The second is that my grandfather was Ian. Now we can only wait and see. If once ruined day's use, both the other party turn their faces, our family of three will be in danger. On the way back, I suddenly found out an exit inside the cave. It turned out to be the corner of the second master's house. What the hell is going on? Could it be that it is the second master who harms my whole family? After returning home, Master and I changed our clothes. Just about to fall asleep. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by my grandmother's screams. Someone actually lost the black shoe in my house. And my grandfather is also dead. When I came to the master's house, it was already full of people. Judging by Zhang Li, the master had just died a few hours. After death, the soul of a normal person stays in the body for a day. But strangely enough, his soul is gone. And Zhang Li also found even weirder things in the master's kitchen. A hot meal in the iron pot turned out to be my grandfather's oil. In other words, the master died after drinking Grandpa's oil. Seeing this, my father was on the verge of collapse. Grandpa cheated on his dead daughter-in-law and gave birth to an incarnation. Now the master drank his grandfather's oil again and died at home. At this moment, the second master heard the news, shouted at my dad and the onlookers. After driving the villagers away, they will leave the official journey to find the soul of the master. After taking out the compass and probing it, he suddenly became nervous. It turned out that the spirit of the young master was nearby, but it suddenly disappeared. That is, someone in the house doesn't want us to find him. And the most suspicious of them is the second master. Wang Taisin feeds newborn cubs with human flesh, just because he wants the children to live a long life and not die young. The blue-clothed boy raised his blade and was about to stab his right hand. Wang Xian roared, "Tall boy, don't touch his child." 100 years after he became a god, he gave birth to 4 cubs, but none of them survived for a year. Either born a demon or killed by mortal things. As a god, we cannot let our children live long and healthy. How sad it is. That's why I kill people for meat. In order to give the cubs to live, they ascend to the immortal god. After listening to Huang Xian's words, the young man was silent, as if none of these things had anything to do with him. At this time, Huang Xian was already in tears. Begged the boy to let his child go. He was willing to trade his life for 3 right hands to live. The young man turned to Huang Xian and said, "I never kill animals other than gods. Just happened to meet your cub. But I can't guarantee that the big war between us won't be innocent." Hearing this, Huang Xian slowly moved forward. "Kill me. I'm not going to resist. I just hope you can keep your promises. My children, live ye well." At this time, those cute right hands. He looked at his mother suspiciously. "They are mortal. It doesn't seem to understand what my mother meant." The young man slowly drew his long knife and aimed it at Huang Xian. The next second, it pierced her heart fiercely. Jiwen, the girl who was caught by Huang Xian on the side. "I kill her." The boy dropped. "You don't have to know to go out of the cave." The girl looked at the dead yellow fairy in the right hand thoughtfully. He also walked out of the cave after him. Only 3 small houses remained. I was overwhelmed by the body that surrounded my mother. Seeing this, I really want to give the male protagonist 2 slaps. Like me, leave a dog's head in the comment section. Let me see how many times. The girl asked repeatedly along the way, why did the boy kill Huang Xian? But she remained silent and refused to speak. After nightfall, the 2 of them went to a wooden house to rest. On the way, I heard that this house is often haunted, But the boy didn't care when it was still echoing. The girl came to the well and wanted to drink water. Alarm bell, in the next second. A crumpled female ghost came out. The female ghost held the girl's face and said, "Let me go, Messire." The door of Yin and Yang, which has been closed for 50 years, is reopened. What ushered in was endless strife between the two worlds. Originally, it was just an ordinary sun world lovelorn, but the three high-ranking Yin of the underworld were nowhere to be found. This time, the Yin and Yang channel is completely opened. Is it really right? Shopkeeper, what do you mean? Principal of the report. Fu Bing's identity tag has been opened, but he was with Yin Xiaolu, who injured the third master. Well, 6. How could he appear in the Yang world? No matter. Send a messenger to send them back first. So it's better to send someone this time. Headmaster. Xiaolu injured me and fled. This errand. I took it. Meanwhile, the battle between the two ghost moves and the eagle walking man continues. I didn't expect these two ghosts to be quite difficult to deal with. It seems that it is a bit difficult to capture them alive. Catch us and wait. Who gave you the guts? Behold, I bowed your soul first. You've been down there for too long, in the sun. But we go to the territory of the eagle people. As soon as the words fell, the two were entangled together. What about you? Do you want to bow my soul too? What use do I want your soul? Just disappear. Aforementioned. Soul sealing. I want to seal my soul. It's that easy. The soul is quiet. 2 soul condensation. The 3 souls close. Open it for me. Said that the big ghost fed the wine, and the Scar Man also started a fierce battle. This level of combat is also too shocking. Fortunately, we have this Zhaozi here. Otherwise, it would have hung up a long time ago. Ew, Fujiu, how did you fall asleep? Something is wrong. Have you eaten your meal? I'll go. These guys aren't done yet. I'll look at the situation. Let's get away with a chance. Odd. They actually stopped. And they're all staring at us. Not surprisingly. We should have been discovered. The 3 brothers for $10. Fight in Daddy's morning hall. A few days after my father was buried, 3 sons had accidents one after another. It happened in 96 years in Jinzhou, Liaoning province. Died in the village jail. But the boss was dissatisfied with the cost to be shared equally by the brothers. And I have to come up with $10 more. Quarreled in front of the old man's morning hall without regard for face. Watching several people do it. The old man's son in the village couldn't stand it anymore. Scolded a few people for a small $10. Delayed his father's funeral. At the same time, it is advisable to find a feng shui place to bury it. It is also good to bless a few people to get rich. Several of the sons stopped when they heard this. Brothers who have always had differences. For the choice of cemetery, but the will is surprising. I want to choose a good feng shui for my father. It can bless future generations with smooth sailing. The 3 of them found Lu Xiaozi, the most evil in the village. Take out the $10,000 you scraped together. Ask him to choose a grave place where there will be offspring. Lu Xiaozi gambled after a wipe. Immediately washed and burnt coals, and immediately hardened. Pat your chest and make sure you find a place. Let future generations be rich and sell it for money. Several people didn't laugh when they heard this. It seems that the death of his own father can make him rich. It is also a happy event. Then Lu Xiaozi took the 3 of them to the mountain to choose a cemetery. On the way, Lu Xiaozi kept putting gold on his face. It is said that this hill is the origin of the royal family. Then he led the 3 of them to walk around the mountains for several hours. Finally choose a hillside down the money to sell. It is said that the mountains and rivers buried people here. Money and pinsui books also come quickly. Thinking that if you bury your father, you can make a fortune. None of the 3 brothers was unhappy. Burying the soil really can't suppress the joy in my heart. Many people saw that the brothers not only did not cry, and I couldn't stop laughing on my face from beginning to end, but after a few days, the boss couldn't laugh anymore. On this day, the second daughter-in-law hurriedly pushed open the door of his house. When I entered the door, I said that the second child was dead. It turned out that in the morning, the second child took the tools of the electric fish to the reasonable electric fish. When he was found, he was lying dead in the water. Someone notified the second daughter-in-law to collect the body. Although the brothers usually do not deal with each other. But if something really happens, you can't ignore it. The boss drove 3 wheels to the river. But drive fast on the road. Just as I was turning a corner, a car came on. Wait for the second daughter-in-law to wake up. The boss's body has been radically transformed. And the third child didn't know what to stimulate. If you are idle all day, you will have nothing to do with a handful of inscription coins in your hand. People in the village said that the 3 brothers had done too much retribution for their lack of morality. There are also old people who say that they were killed by the cemetery chosen by the shrimp. It didn't take long. Because of the collapse of muddy water, the grave in the prison was covered. And Shan Tujing actually hired a group of imps to carry a sedan chair for him. And the bride who was married was a lady who had just been resurrected. Just when the villagers who were eating, she wondered whose house was Tujing in the middle of the night. Some people pointed out that none of the heel rings of the Taiwan people touched the ground. This is clearly a little ghost to lock people's lives. Seeing this, the crowd instantly went into chaos. At this time, Zhang Yiqing said loudly, "Don't mess around, everyone. These imps specialize in sucking the living and frightening. If you run away, you will surely die. I am a Taoist priest from Longhu Mountain, and I will protect you completely." Seeing that the villagers did not give way to themselves, these little ghosts flickered around the chains and played ruthlessly. He even wanted to detain their souls with soul chains. Zhang Yiqing blocked in front of the little ghost with a sword step, angrily scolded them to get out of the way. But there was still one who was not afraid of death and rushed up. The ghostly soul chain flicked violently, was tightly held in Zhang Yiqing's hands. The little ghost was also frightened by this scene. This was the first time he had seen a dwelling soul chain that a living person could drill. Before he could continue to think, he was slapped away by Zhang Yiqing. This opened the eyes of the villagers on the sidelines. Repeatedly praised Zhang Yiqing for being a dragon and tiger heavenly master. And the little imp in the opposite direction also muttered. After weighing it, it was decided to retreat first. After the crowd dispersed, I asked if the person I wanted to marry was Qiyao. Today is a day of escape. And what about tomorrow? It won't be that simple next time. The river god of the Qingtai River may come to the door in person. I was almost scared to death when I heard this. What is Qiyao's identity? Why was he favored by the river god? I held Qiyao's hand and told her not to be afraid. Was looked at by Zhang Yiqing. Master Zhang, don't get me wrong. We didn't mean that. Zhang Yiqing turned his head and smiled. You two must not go out of the room tonight. No matter what's going on out there. After Master Zhang left, Qiao and I were just about to turn off the lights and go to bed. There was a knock at the door. When I opened the door, I saw that my godfather was looking for me. I was just about to go out and ask my godfather what was the matter. Qiao gently tugged at my arm. I whispered no. I comforted Qiao so that she didn't have to be afraid. He's my godfather. In the next second, blood oozed from the godfather's face. Then he fell to the ground with a thud. Seeing this scene, Qiao didn't let me go out. But I can't watch my godfather die out there anymore. We had no choice but to pull him in through the threshold. I shuddered and tried my godfather's snort. Then he slumped to the ground with a bang. My godfather is dead. Have you ever heard of the Anhui Hang ghost incident that shocked the whole country? A woman who was used to being bullied by the village chief chose to hang himself for revenge. As long as the village chief's house is moving. Basically, strange things have happened. What the hell is going on here? Welcome to 10 Ways of Ghost Cases. Anhui Jai Zigi Incident. The story takes place in 2003. The location is Shitu Village, Huizhou District, Huangshan City, Anhui Province. Noon that day, the village chief, Niu Ma, was arguing with a villager. He was involved in an argument with a husband and wife in the village. The couple contracted the difference of 20 acres of land in the village. Originally, the contract was for a period of 10 years. But it's only been 5 years. The cows and horses wanted to take back the land. This made it really difficult for the couple to accept. In the past few years, all the family's savings have been invested. It's time to harvest. But I heard such news. For this reason, Hong Mei took the land contract. Keep questioning the cows and horses. However, what she didn't expect was this. Nioma snatched the contract as soon as he could. Without saying a word, he tore her up. This is not the first time that the couple has been suppressed by cattle and horses. In the first 2 years, the village originally paid positive and negative money for road construction. But when it was repaired to the door of Hong Mei's house, but the cows and horses made them pay for the road construction. These unfair treatments, so that the couple can no longer bear it. They rushed up and had to fight with the cattle and horses. However, Nyoma had long expected this. There are not a few people in the village who want to beat him, so he doesn't care where he goes. We'll bring 2 bodyguards. So the couple didn't even touch him. Was beaten to a bruised nose and swollen face. This makes the honest couple. I had no choice but to leave the village committee, just like a cow and a horse. This time you can make a lot of money. Hong Mei suddenly turned her head and gritted her teeth at him. Nyoma, you remember it from my mother. This time, even if I'm a ghost, I won't let you go. The bodyguards on the side are sturdy. Ask the cattle and horses if they want to start the fence first. But Nyoma didn't take Hong Mei's words seriously. However, it was not a few days later. Strange things started to happen. Early that morning, the cows and horses were ready to go to the county's foot-washing town to get comfortable. But when he opens the courtyard door, only to find 2 strange things in front of me. He looked up. He was so frightened that he almost fainted. I saw the red plum who is often bullied by herself. He was wearing a bright red shirt. Hanged on the doorbeam. This is a pernicious curse in the countryside. Look at Hong Mei's rolled eyes and spit out her tongue. Nyoma suddenly felt that his legs were still there, as soon as he sat on the ground. At this time, he regretted it immensely. Kept yelling and apologizing. Hong Mei's husband, after learning the news, did not seek revenge on the cattle and horses. Instead, he pulled away his wife's body without saying a word. but there was a grim expression on his face. But it made the cow and horse feel creepy. After this incident, strange things began to happen in the house of the cow and horse. The cats and dogs of the sheep in the family were abandoned and disappeared in the night. The wife was also accidentally hit in the head by a red horse falling from the roof. After Nyoma took his wife to the hospital, but the doctor told him that his wife had become a fool. Before Nyoma could calm down for his wife's affairs, his bodyguards had even worse news. The second child of the family unexpectedly drowned in the river. When the cattle and horses are driven back to the village, the son's body was already stiff. This kind of blow let the cattle and horses almost collapse. He bought a bottle of liquor and walked away while drinking. I don't know what to do. However, when he passed the city of Xiaoxiao to the west of the village, weird things are starting to happen again. A woman dressed in red suddenly appeared in front of her. Isn't this Nima the red mole that hanged to death? At this time, the red mole tongue stretched out for a long time. The mouth kept talking. None of you will die well. It's a terrifying picture. The frightened bladder of the cow and horse exploded directly, stretched down the giants that came. She couldn't stand properly at all. Her body fell backwards. The whole person fell off the bridge. Since the small bridge is not very high, so just broke one of her legs. Since then, the Nyoma family moved out of the house. Her position as village chief is also out of work because of this. She took her eldest son and stupid wife to live in the county seat. And that house is still in the village to this day. It has become a well-known weird murder house. In order to win people's sympathy, my sister actually stuck me to death in the street. Just now, my sister is a mediocre person in order to be able to enter a big family. Stick a dagger in my head on the street. A man saw that my sister was kind by nature, so he was kind enough to take her home. As soon as I entered the door, my sister noticed that something was wrong. The mediocre people in the courtyard stared at them as directly as the dead. And there was a red coffin in the house arranged for her by the housekeeper. Before leaving, he told her to have a good rest. Don't run around. Just when my sister was at a loss, the coffin on the side suddenly moved. The one who crawled out of it was me, who had just been inserted to death by her. Yell, brother, you're awake. You're a tiger girl. He actually stuck a knife in your brother. That's a long way to go. Plug it in. You're not going to die anyway. The public has always been inexplicably dead lately. Someone must be practicing dance in it. Let's be careful today. Tomorrow in action. Little sister, I'll sleep in the coffin today. You also have good rest. So I lay back in the coffin. Don't worry, brother. I'm going to recharge my batteries. The airplane sister lay on the bed and fell asleep. 3 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly there was a sound of a door opening at the door. It was so crowded that Grandma walked into the house with a lantern still. Their target is their sleeping sister. My sister was carried out by them. After coming to the public compound, the yard was already full of people. The old man touched his sister's face and said, "The people in this room, including me, are very sick. We have no choice but to feed our bones and continue to live." And the material from which he was refined was a living person. This is the symbiotic bone. I'm sorry, little girl. In the next second, a dagger stabbed into his sister's chest. Then they melted their bellies on the ground with blood. Livelihood for one person. Replace me with serious injuries. Odd, how could there be no response? It shouldn't be, because you chose the wrong person. The symbiotic bone should choose the living. And my sister, she is dead. Be sure not to pour leftover rice directly into the river, because there's a good chance that this will bring you god-killing fire. Use 2 caddies of rice to wake up the god of the river. With a fierce face, she asked if it was the riverman who had been stabbing here in the middle of the night. Before we could answer, the little ghost beside the river god muttered quietly, "Last time, it was these people who blocked the river god from taking relatives." Hearing this, the river god gave an order. A horde of imps rushed up. I saw Zhang Yiqing standing forward unhurriedly. With a snort, he tore off his sleeve. After throwing the sleeves on the ground, the broken sleeves began to split and grow. In just a few seconds, all the imps were wrapped into Zongzi. Seeing this scene, the god snorted coldly, jumped up and killed Zhang Yiqing. He just raised his hand. The river behind him rose 100 meters. All of a sudden, it all slapped at us. But the river stopped at the moment when it was about to touch Zhang Yiqing. It's as if you've met your master. They all turned around and slapped at the river god. As a river god, he was beaten by his own river. Annoyed and angry, he naturally refused to give up. You became the god of the piano and the river, but you are about to cause a fire. Don't you know? The voice landed and the divine horse froze in place. You are a riverman after all. It doesn't matter who I am. You just have to remember who made you the river god. The river god sighed and stopped attacking. Answered Zhang Yiqing's question honestly. The scene in front of me really left me dumbfounded. The river god surrendered obediently. Could it be that Zhang Yiqing is the god of the sea? When Zhang Yiqing asked if there was a person who died in the river recently, when you stand up on your own after death, the river god's face was stunned. It's hard to wonder if there is such a person recently, but I don't know where he came from. And my father's soul is not with him. The soul of affection is not with you. Never mind. Then you can help me find out who is standing up. If you can't find out after 3 days, the Luo immortal won't be able to find you. With that, he turned and left. Only the dazed Qintai river god was left. On the way home, I asked Zhang Yiqing where my father's soul was. Where else can you go except in this Qintai river? Xiaohuai, you remember. The river is not as simple as it seems. After returning home, Zhang Yiqing told me that something big would happen in the near future, but I don't want to say what the specific big thing is. In desperation, I had to go inside to check on my father. I found out that my father was missing, and there was a note left on the table. Open it and take a look. Don't look for me, the 4 big words are impressive. At this time, Zhang Yiqing spoke. Don't worry, your dad is fine. He just offended people who shouldn't be offended. There's something big going on, as I just said. It means that the person is going to be resurrected. In ancient times, there was an emperor who had a flavor of merit in his life. In order to make yourself immortal, a Qintai was built here. The Qintai River also got its name from this. Hearing this, I couldn't help but ask, could it be that the emperor you were talking about? It's that Qin Shi Huang didn't succeed. Let's not talk about that. If you want to meet your dad, tomorrow morning, light up the 3 lanes at the door. Wait until it gets dark and call your dad's name 3 times. But during this period, it must remain immortal. This is something that even science would not dare to report. Shandong folktales. Ignorant villagers in the Yellow River. Captivate. But I didn't think about it a few days later. Led to the mysterious deaths of hundreds of villagers. This is the Yellow River Ghost Pass incident that caused a sensation throughout the country. I don't know if you've heard of it. The story takes place on the banks of the Yellow River in the 80s of the last century. At that time, it was the annual dry season of the Yellow River. The government organized nearby villagers to clean up the mud in the Yellow River. It was noon that day. 2 women are walking to the banks of the Yellow River with their prepared meals. The 2 had just walked to the embankment. I saw a strange picture. I saw dozens of men cleaning up the mud in the river suddenly stop the fire in their hands. They shouted loudly together in the sky. The 2 were shocked when they saw this. Can't figure out what happened to these men. But it's strange to say, it wasn't long before the men began to clean up the mud again. It's as if nothing had happened. Wait until noon to eat. The men stopped what they were doing and went to rest on the embankment. One of the women who delivered the meal thought the scene was very strange. I asked about my man just now. Unexpectedly, everyone had no memory of what they had just done. The woman thought it was very strange when she heard this, because I don't just see through this matter alone. It's impossible to be mistaken. At this time, a villager who had stayed in the river hurried over. Said it was a strange thing dug up in the river. Everyone put down their dishes and chopsticks and came to the riverbank. But the next scene surprised everyone. I saw only a few villagers who stayed behind. A large, rectangular transparent object is being excavated in the river. Let's take a closer look. It turned out to be a transparent coffin, and there was a black shadow inside. The crowd was intrigued by this strange stew. I didn't eat anymore, and I started digging one after another. Soon most of the coffin had been dug up. But the more you dig down, the more surprised everyone becomes. Because there is a huge coffin bed under the coffin. The crowd watched around the coffin for a long time. It was found that the coffin seemed to be one, and there was not the slightest gap at all. But there were many small fish swimming in the coffin. How did these little fish get in? Just when the villagers were at a loss for a while. When Sun, the village head, called with a large group of people. After a brief understanding of what happened, he beckoned everyone to start digging. But it doesn't matter how they dig. The big coffin didn't move. At this time, a Mr. Yin and Yang in the village hurriedly stopped everyone. According to him, this is the Longguan in the Yellow River. The suppression at the bottom is the Longan. Once the dragon is removed, the consequences will be dire. But how can the village chief, who is eager to make meritorious contributions, manage this? Immediately encouraged everyone to continue digging the coffin with him to make meritorious contributions. Mr. Yin and Yang were helpless when he saw this. Just before leaving, he told all the villagers present to leave quickly. Otherwise, you will be restrained by the anger of the life rat. Mr. Yin Yang has been in the village for many years. The means are also very profound. Many people respected him for choosing to leave. But there were still many people who stayed with the village chief. The transparent sarcophagus looks like it was carved out of stone. No matter how much everyone digs, they can't shake half a point. It was already getting dark. Everyone had no choice but to pack up their tools and go home. Wait until the next day to call some people over to help. The village chief is afraid that someone will have crooked mind. A few people were deliberately left to guard the river. But those who stayed behind heard the direction of the Yellow River that night. There was a strange roar. Something happened the next morning. A middle-aged woman is in a hurry. Knocked on Mr. Yin Yang's door. The woman is the wife of the village chief. She said the village chief was suddenly bedridden last night. Now he is unconscious. And the village chief's physiognomy is the snake. And at this time, there are people who can't beat it one after another. It turns out that there are a few left yesterday. This happened to the villagers who counted snakes and dragons. Mr. Een and Yang knew that this was caused by the dragon pass move yesterday, so he hurriedly led the people to the river. But when the group came to the bank of the river, only to find that someone had already come here. At this time, he was touching and rubbing against the sarcophagus. Obviously, it is necessary to continue to dig. Mr. Een and Yang, to save people's hearts, hurriedly shouted to stop these people. Unexpectedly, the expert who took the lead said that he represented the government. They don't believe in this feudal superstition at all. Seeing this, the villagers who came with him had no choice but to return to the village. And Mr. Een and Yang squatted on the shore, looking at those experts with mixed feelings. Soon, the archaeological team brought in large machinery. The transparent sarcophagus was pulled up. However, not long after the sarcophagus was removed, a huge jet of water, suddenly gushing out from under the coffin bed. It filled the entire river in an instant, and the archaeological team members who were excavating the coffin bed, in the blink of an eye, he was swept into the rushing water. On that year, the sudden yellow river swept away many easy people along the river, and the villagers who participated in the excavation were like rushing water. In the end, they were all bizarre and exposed. This matter was in the country at the time. It caused a lot of sensation. All kinds of rumors are spreading, but no one can really explain the choice of life. And the sarcophagus became a name. The drunken big fox, I'm sleeping, was tied to a tree by Erzwang's father and Lao Luo. I was going to wrap the skin at dawn, send it to the market and sell it for a good price. But wait until midnight. The second strong father suddenly screamed. This frightened the second Zhuang Yang. She was curled up on all fours, trembling all over. The mouth is called grasshopper. The second lady hurriedly got up, called Chen Lao, go over. Kill me. You look for death. At this time, the second father was foaming at the mouth, seeing that this life is explained here. Originally, the second father made a little money that day. I didn't come home at night. Came to my friend Lao Luo's house to drink together. Unexpectedly, the big fox took the opportunity to fall on Lao Luo's body. That liquor is really dry cup by glass. Holding the whole chicken, he began to nibble. I saw that the wine was finished. Lao Luo threw himself on the table. You're too unproductive. It's like I've never seen wine and meat in my life. After sobering up, the two walked out of the house. Then I saw the big fox lying drunk on the side of the road. Therefore, the second strong father had evil thoughts. I learned that the big fox was tied up in the backyard. Chen Laogo had a number in his heart. I saw the big fox struggling. I think it's a little funny. In order to steal food and drink, he also lost his life. This big fox is really fresh. Chen Laogo thought to himself that he was just eating and drinking, and harmless people to do evil, and he was sent back into the mountains. In the future, if you want to eat meat and drink alcohol, come to the west of the village to find me. Unexpectedly, this big fox was moved. Then drill into the woods. Lost. That's it. Chen Laogo put the freshly made big chicken legs and chicken wings sandwiched on a plate. Put a glass of white wine. Leave it outside the door. He whistled and went back to the house. At this time, Chen Xiaogo understood. Daddy's wine and meat. It's for the big fox. Then the big fox cooperated with Chen Laogo. Solved a lot of trouble. Those who come and go back and forth become friends. Ah, father, Inyo, isn't it the legendary fairy of the horse? His father took advantage of this practice of a wild immortal family. Speaking of which, it should be considered a horse. At that moment, there was a noise outside the door. A large fox flashed out of the darkness. I don't stay after eating and drinking. Turn around and disappear into the night. Father, I've heard that this horse fairy is amazing. Do you want it or not? I can pass it on to you. This can still be passed on. Isn't that going to be a great god? It's all old. What a shame for me to do this. The son and daughter-in-law squatted in the house and ate meat, but he only gave the old lady at the moment to eat steamed buns and pickles. Although Li Lao air was a little unbearable in his heart, but because he was afraid of his wife, it was strange. So every time I finish delivering food, I don't dare to stay longer. During the meal, Li Lao air said cautiously, my mother wants to drink soy milk. Otherwise, I'll find time to grind him somewhat. After listening to Li Lao's words, the woman was furious. Scolded to work so busy every day. How can I have time to touch her soy milk? Let's talk about it, and keep cursing the mother-in-law right now, who should have died a long time ago. Living to this point will only drag them back. After falling asleep in the middle of the night, there was a sudden noise in the yard. It sounds like someone is touching soy milk. The two of them opened the window and looked at it, but they didn't see anything. I thought I had heard it wrong and went back to sleep. Wait for the next day when Li Lao air delivers food to his mother. The old lady said suddenly, son, don't send soy milk to your mother at night. It's so tiring to work in the field during the day. Don't touch soy milk for your mother at night. After listening to the old lady's words, Li Lao air was very confused. When I went back to the house, I told my wife. Both of them were a little surprised. So I decided to sneak a peek into the yard at night. What the hell was going on? After dark, Li Lao moved a stool. Stay in front of the window. It was almost 11 o'clock. There was a punctual sound outside the door. A sound of pushing graphite. Take a good look into the courtyard. Sure enough, there was a dark shadow touching soy milk. And also put the hot soy milk that is touched. It was placed at the door of the old lady. See this scenario. Li Lao picked up his shotgun and rushed out to take a look. Found touching soy milk. It turned out to be a cat-faced person. Didn't wait for Li Lao's reaction. The cat-faced man jumped up and onto the wall. Just then the old lady opened the door. Let Li Lao let her go. Don't chase her. With that, he picked up the soy milk on the ground. He smiled contentedly and did not continue to speak. Although Li Lao wanted to ask what was going on. But the old lady walked into the hut tremblingly with soy milk. Let's go back. Later, your daughter-in-law will not want to do it again. After returning to the house, Li Lao lay on the bed and couldn't sleep. I suddenly remembered when I was a child. At that time, my mother's eyes had not yet fallen. There is also a kitten named Hey Hey at home. Black is very likable. Every time he finished eating, he rubbed around Li Lao's legs. Later, Hey Hey has been living in Li's second family for 15 years. One day when the second mom and dad were sleeping, suddenly, I heard someone outside calling for my mother. But when I looked up, I found that my son was sleeping in the house and did not go out. The old couple looked out suspiciously, found that the one who called the mother turned out to be the black cat at home. This strange scene scared them enough. At that time, Li Lao's father remembered a saying. It is said that cats will learn to speak when they live for more than 8 years. Then one member of the family will be replaced. If the old cat speaks, he will definitely not be able to stay. The cat had to be killed. When Yin said this, the second mother really couldn't bear it. The next day, he put the bowl of black eating outside the door. It means to let her leave on her own. At that time, Li Lao cried for a long time when he saw that Hey Hey was leaving. The black cat saw his bowl being placed outside the door. I also understood the meaning of the family. He left the Li family without turning around. Never came back since. Thinking of this, Li Lao already knows. It was Hey Hey who gave the old lady moto ginger. And that bowl was the bowl that my mother fed Hey Hey at that time. The next morning, Li Lao got up early. Tell the daughter-in-law that she is going to give her mother moto chiang. Then take her to the main house to live. In the process of Li Lao bringing the old lady back, a familiar cat meow came from nowhere. You've heard of the profession of a papermaker. It's a paperman and a paper horse. I grew up learning the craft from my master. I have also seen a lot of life and death. On this day, I came to the Nakahii house in the next village. The steward took master and me to the barn. Tell master to hold on tightly. I'll give master a hand. First of all, it was a flamboyance. It's only done in one go. It took a busy night to prepare a set of paper people and paper horses. Master told me to clean up. He will put incense on the Lord's house. That's what it is. When all work is done, incense is given to the deceased. I'm done. The master had finished offering incense and was inquiring about the deceased. I have the impression that master has never been a nosy person. Thinking about it, master must have noticed something wrong. I slipped into the morning hall while no one was looking. Wait for me to pinch my hands and feet and look closer to the coffin. The old man of the Li family was lying in the coffin lifeless. But the old man is not very different from someone else's corpse. Eyes slightly open. In our line of work, we call death blind and blind. I'm wondering when I can. I didn't notice anyone was behind me. He reached out and pressed it on my shoulder. I was trembling with fear. I looked back and realized that it was Li Zhongping. He glared at me angrily, asked me what I was doing when I ran into the morning hall. I made up a nonsense and said that it would be incense. He urged me to leave as soon as I was done. I could feel him staring at me with a gloomy face. I think it's weird. Leaning in Master's ear, he said that Li Zhongping was a little abnormal this time. Master first drank a glass of wine. Then he stood up and said I don't meddle with things. He's going back to a friend tonight. We'll be back later. I don't think I can help the Lord's house. So he went back to sleep in the wing house arranged by the Lord's house early. But in the middle of the night, I was woken up by a scream. I looked out the window. I saw an old man standing outside the window of the main house. It was the old man of the Li family who stared at Li Zhongping and his wife. Li Zhongping and his wife began to kneel on Kong and kowtow constantly, scolded himself for not being a human being, and should not have given him the medicine. I didn't take good care of him when I was alive. He was sick and was not treated. The old man was consumed to death. Seeing that the old man was indifferent, he slapped himself again and slapped his big mouth, begged the old man for forgiveness. The couple tossed for most of the night. The old man seemed to be angry. His feet floated off the ground. I just lay in front of the window and watched the old man disappear. I was so scared that I couldn't sleep anymore. It wasn't until the second half of the night that Master returned. I hurriedly told me a little about the old man settling accounts with Li Zhongping, but Master was indifferent and urged me to go to bed quickly. The next day, Master and I got up early to get on our way. Li Zhongping sent us out with a blue nose and swollen face. It wasn't until I grew up that I learned that the old man had appeared that night. It's all Master's means. It's just that master has never admitted it. Just told me to be loyal and filial. As the saying goes, saving a life is better than building a 7th-level floating slaughter. But do you know what you can get by saving Wang Tai-sin's life? On this day, Li Zhongping was ready to work in the field as usual. Far away, I saw 2 people chasing something on the street. Li Zhongping took a closer look. The 2 were found playing with a shiny weasel with a stick. Li Zhongping felt that the weasel monster was pitiful. Discussed with the 2 of them to spare their lives. But the 2 of them are on the letter. Didn't pay attention to what Li Zhongping said at all. It is also said that it is not impossible to let the weasel go, as long as Li Zhongping can take out 10 copper coins. These 10 copper coins are not much, though. But for Li Zhongping, who is from a poor family, it's a huge sum of money. Zhao San saw that Li Zhongping couldn't come up with the money. He picked up the stick and poked the weasel hard. Poked the weasel and screamed in pain. Li Zhongping really couldn't stand it. As soon as he gritted his teeth, he took out 10 copper coins from his pocket and handed them to them. The 2 of them received the money and were no longer embarrassed by the weasel. I took the money and walked away happily, and the weasel got up with a grunt. I ran away along the wall lamp. Although it broke a little money, it can be regarded as a lifesaver. Li Zhongping didn't take it to heart and went to work in the field. But since that day, Li Zhongping would often see the weasel scurrying around in front of his house. Strangely enough, the weasel neither steals chickens nor is it clear. Li Zhongping did not drive this away. Let him come and go every day. 20 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Li Zhongping's life has not changed much. Still destitute. This evening, Li Zhongping was asleep. Suddenly, he felt a man in a yellow robe come to his bed. He kept calling him for his kindness. Then I listened to the man. You saved my life. Now I'm successful in my cultivation. I want to protect you for the rest of your life. Yonghua is rich. Immediately afterwards, Li Zhongping was awakened. Looked around, but there was no figure of the yellow-robed man. Also since that day, Li Zhongping no longer farms. Instead, the group began to brew vinegar. But what he didn't expect was that the vinegar he brewed was surprisingly good. Soon it made a name for itself in the town. Merchants in nearby villages have chosen to come to his house to buy goods. The more you win, the more you earn. After you have the capital, Li Zhongping started all kinds of trading again. Business is surprisingly good. It can be described as smooth sailing. It only took a year. Li Zhongping's business has already done a very large-scale business. Nowadays, you just need to lie down at home every day and collect money. With Wangwan family wealth, Li Zhongping chose a piece of feng shui land in the village. A splendid mansion was built. In the midst of that mansion, he even built a room on his own. It is used exclusively to worship Wang Tai-sin. I thought I could live the rest of my life with peace of mind. But I don't want to be this night. Li Zhongping suddenly heard someone calling out to him at the bedside. I saw the yellow-robed man say to Li Zhongping with an anxious face, "The rhubarb in the house will save 5 cubs." Among them was a cub with white markings on its chest. It is the best of the best. This dog will hurt my children and grandchildren. Please be sure to dispose of it. The yellow-robed man finished explaining. He disappeared without a trace. Early the next morning, Li Zhongping told his wife about it. His wife's persuasion of him was just a dream. Don't take it too seriously. And yet at this moment, a house slave hurried in. Said that the rhubarb in the family was born. Li Zhongping was shocked when he heard this. Asked about the puppies that rhubarb had born. The house slave replied. A total of 5 were born. One of them also has a white pattern on its chest. It's very good looking. Hear that? Li Zhongping's heart sank suddenly. It seems that last night's dream was real. Immediately afterwards, Li Zhongping followed the house slave to the backyard. I saw the yellow dog lying on the ground, feeding a group of puppies. The house slave who had reported the news earlier picked it up. One of them was held up in front of Li Zhongping's eyes. I saw a tuft of white hair on the puppy's chest. It looks very beautiful and cute. Li Zhongping originally wanted to follow what the yellow-robed man said. Dispose of this puppy. But I really like it in my heart. I was a little reluctant. So he told the slaves to pack up an empty room and come out. Keep that puppy inside and send someone to guard it every day. In his spare time, Li Zhongping would also often go to the empty house to tease the puppy. Half a year has passed in a blink of an eye. Also bit something to death. Li Zhongping panicked when he heard this. I suddenly had a bad premonition in my heart. In a hurry, they ran out. And behold, there were 3 small weasels on the ground. They had all been bitten off by the puppy. Seeing this scene, Li Zhongping almost fainted. I kept screaming that I was in trouble. A moment later, he hurried into the house where the immortal family was enshrined. With a thud, he knelt down in front of the tablet. Pray that the immortals don't blame him. However, the next second, the tablet on the table was in Li Zhongping's shocked gaze. It cracked in half with a click. It was in the middle of the night. Since then, Li Zhongping's family business began to decline rapidly. Almost overnight, Li Zhongping became a pauper. The glory of the past is like a dream of yellow grain. If you don't see it, you're gone. And Li Zhongping also moved out of the luxurious mansion. His whereabouts have not been